We actually Chris.
Go hoot. And,
Check.
and I can control the camera over there, but I want pronouns. And
Well, we'll have,
Yeah.
Those mics are hot. We are the AIA Virginia Emerging Leaders in Architecture, class of 2022. We are a group of young professionals and students from across Virginia who have come together to deepen our understanding of the professional practice and to use our collective skills to benefit Belmont-FALLON's community in Roanoke. We have met once a month for the last year in different locations around the state to learn from our colleagues and to collaborate with each other. Today is our final presentation and our chance to present our ideas to the broader architectural community. Our year-long project has been focused on providing the city of Roanoke a design proposal which creates community gathering spaces at various scales that can reinvigorate Belmont-FALLON's neighborhood center. Belmont-FALLON, excuse me. Our target area was Belmont-FALLON in the city of Roanoke. And for those of you who may be unfamiliar with it, it is in what's called the southeast portion of Roanoke. Previously connected to the city, it has been somewhat disconnected from its past. But upon visiting the place, you start to get a sense of a community that still thrives, a community that is supported not only by the city, but by patrons, by other companies that are dispersed throughout the entire area. So during this project, we knew that it was going to be of utmost importance to reach out to these people and to collaborate with these people. I'd like to take just a minute here to recognize these are some of the partners that we worked with in order to establish the goals for this area.
And to start the project, we decided to take a look back at the history of Belmont-FALLON. Roanoke was established in 1838 as a town for those traveling out west. It soon became a railroad town, being the headquarters of Norfolk and Western. Roanoke was an important city because it was the staging grounds for materials going to and from the west. It was a hub for coal as it traveled from Kentucky and West Virginia. The railroad changed the character of the city to what it is today. Belmont-FALLON is the closest community to downtown Roanoke. Developed by the Belmont-FALLON Land Company, 3/4 of the homes were built between 1890 and 1950. They were for pretty well-off middle-class workers. It was built to house the workers of large factories north of the site. Norfolk and Western, Roanoke was at the front line of exploring the frontier. The railroad became the staging ground for the materials to and from the frontier, as I said before. Founded in 1881, they built the buildings known as the shops. It employed more than 6,000 people in the 1930s. It was known as the Detroit of the railroad industry. They could build 4 locomotives and 20 rail cars a day. The J class was the most advancst steam engine ever built, equivalent to the Saturn V rocket. From 1927 to 1953, the shops built every steam engine for Norfolk and Western. The American Viscose plant, established in 1917, the growth of the plant was due to the product called a rayon, which is called an artificial silk for short. It sat on 212 acres of land. By 1928, it had more than 5,500 workers, mostly women at 58%. Because of the war, there were mostly women at that plant. 35% of all production came out of this plant, between 12 and 13 million pounds of rayon. All of the amenities were also found in this factory, including food, a dining hall, shopping, a gym, a dorm for single women. The dormitory also included a cafeteria, bakery, library, gymnasium, and laundry. The company also built a swimming pool, tennis courts, ski range, a bowling green on the complex, and the employees were very social within the company, and they also held many events like on the site. So when the factories shut down in the late 1950s, all of their amenities went away. All of their shopping went away. Everything they had that was invested in the community went away when those factories went away. Also, during the 1980s, Interstate 581 was built, further cutting off down the community from downtown. This redlining map shows that after the factories closed and after the interstate was built, this community was cut off and was redlined, leading to further decay of the community.
Yeah. Mapping is an essential tool to understand the neighborhood. It enables us to visualize the existing complex dynamics and various interrelationships present in and around the site. So it also helps us to derive the needs of the neighborhood with careful research and analysis. So the target area for this intervention extends from I-581 and Fallon Park from west to east and runs from Tazewell Avenue to Highland Avenue from north to south. As we all know from the introduction, Fallon is one of Roanoke's oldest neighborhoods, and it has its unique historical charm to it. When we experience a neighborhood for the first time, the most important thing that strikes us, it often the way it looks, the streetscapes, the houses, and various contextual elements that together expresses a holistic character. So this neighborhood is very unique in some important ways with richness in history and past industrial development. Let's dive into some details here. So Belmont real estate is primarily made up of small to medium-sized single-family homes and small apartment buildings, which typically ranges from tiny studio to 4 to 5 bedroom houses. At least 3/4 of these houses were built from 1890 and 1950s. So the whole target area, it is about 200 acres in size, and we would be focusing on few pockets of site across this neighborhood for design interventions, which eventually acts as a catalyst that creates a huge impact on the community over time. So the next map, this is the figure ground map. This diagram is a mapping technique used to illustrate the relationship between the built and unbuilt spaces in cities. So land coverage of buildings is visualized as solid mass, which is a figure, which public spaces formed by streets, parks, and roads are represented as voids, which is the ground. So the figure ground represents a minimalistic information yet highly important component towards understanding a neighborhood. So the spatial analysis map can give useful information about the shape, scale, pattern, and density of buildings, in addition to the nature of spaces created between them. So this map especially here summarizes the contrast between available open spaces and built spaces in the neighborhood. The available open spaces shown here could be a potential site for public and cultural infrastructures in the future. So the next map, when working on any site, it is essential to understand the elevation levels, like how the terrain and landscape influences the existing condition, while also carving the decisions for future development. So we did an analysis on the existing levels in the neighborhood that interprets the flood level prone zones in the area. So taking into consideration of this factor emphasizes the importance of open space planning, integrating a well-designed stormwater management, and the need for adequate blue-green infrastructures in the neighborhood that controls flood levels and reduces urban heat island effects. So coming to this map 4, so this shows the transport system and connectivity existing in the target areas. So this is a highly important factor in order to make a neighborhood active. So this map represents the major thoroughfares for use for commuting. So the Jameson and the Bullet access a one-way. These two are state roads crossing the neighborhood. So the Jameson runs through east to west and Bullet from west to east. The speed limit for these are 35 miles per hour in this neighborhood, but if we observe it, it is way more than that. So the existing networks work good for cars, but the need of the hour is to make it to work for people. So in the next map from geospatial data sets, we were analyzing the land values and parcel values of the neighborhood. This map represents the value of built spaces in each plot. This values doesn't differentiate the typology of buildings, as the neighborhood typology ranges from commercial, retail, and housing. This helped us to identify the influencing factors for development and the value of buildings around the neighborhood. In the next map, As most of the land divisions are almost of similar size, this represents the land value ranges in the project area. So we can clearly see the difference between the downtown and also our Fallon community. So in this map, this shows the existing healthcare facilities in our target area. So we thought this is an important factor to consider in the development, as Belmont neighborhood is currently in a medically underserved area with only one health facility apart from the downtown Carillon clinic. So this map shows us the proposed future land use as by the Roanoke city. So we came across this information during our research stage, and this consists of various ideologies that's envisioned by the city for the neighborhood to work. So this plan consists of new improved land use with mixed use high density residentials and single family scattered multiplexes and village centers, residential clusters, and office residential mixed zones. We took the essence of this approach and tried to incorporate in our proposal, providing design solutions that work for the Fallon community.
So looking at the population of Belmont Fallon, it's a community of about 2,700 residents, which comprises about 3% of the population of Roanoke. During its industry-dependent years, as Brian said, it hosted a more diverse population, and so many of these families have stayed around in the neighborhood, retaining its higher rate when compared to broader Roanoke. The community boasts a range of employment types, with higher rates of blue-collar and service industry employment. It also hosts a higher unemployment rate when compared to the state of Virginia. Belmont Fallon is located within Southeast Roanoke, which has been labeled both a food desert and a medically underserved area. This, combined with the high percentage of households without a vehicle, leads to many of the access struggles and the health needs as cited in the Roanoke Valley Community Health Assessment. All of this data helps us to understand how the history of the neighborhood has and continues to affect the residents of Belmont Fallon, and how we can best approach the needs, wants, and visions of the community.
Over the past year, our Emerging Leaders in Architecture program has had the pleasure of participating in multiple community engagement efforts geared at better understanding the Belmont Fallon neighborhood through the lens of its inhabitants. Throughout our various touch points with the community, we have listened, learned, and have seen firsthand the outpouring of love that so many Belmont Fallon community members have for their neighborhood. In our engagement efforts, we participated in monthly Southeast Action Forum meetings in conjunction with broader ELA community-led efforts throughout the year. The joy in this neighborhood is evident, and our Emerging Leaders group were aware of this when we talked with after-school students at the Belmont Fallon Presbyterian Community Center and Belmont Branch Library in May. In collaborative settings with students, we provided a framework for the students to imagine their neighborhood. In conversations, we asked them, what do they love about their neighborhood? What do they love about their home? What makes it special and unique? And where do they see opportunities for change within their own neighborhood? Across both May engagements, we heard about how these students love to be outdoors. They are big fans of sports. Activities, including but not limited to running and playing tag, are inherently artistic and see value in quiet spaces. The reward for ELA was hearing about the happiness that these children have for their home. In July, our group returned to Belmont Fallon for the annual iHeart Southeast Festival, with the goal of hearing from more community members across different demographics and age groups to augment the data we received from the local students. In an open forum with the community members at the festival, ELA engaged in dialogue to learn more about this neighborhood and the inherent potential within the target area. In looking specifically at the neighborhood target area, the community provided necessary feedback and identified areas for improvement. In addition to the holistic challenge of introspectively looking at their neighborhood, we enjoyed soliciting feedback on patterns, colors, fonts, and icons that sparked joy to better understand and ground the findings that we were seeing throughout the engagement sessions. Makeshift photo booth brought out the charm, character, and unique qualities of the neighborhood community, including many of its four-legged friends. We know now more than ever that Belmont Fallon is vibrant, as evidenced by the people who live here and the care and time they put into this neighborhood across many different scales, events such as community blockers, community-led art initiatives, community festivals, and utilization of community amenity spaces. And their neighborhood should reflect this vibrancy, with various gathering spaces at multiple scales to reinvigorate the neighborhood center. Driven by data and ideas from the Belmont-Fallon community, ELA began the process of synthesizing these concepts into a larger framework for the neighborhood. When looking back at the data we received, the ideas of the community brought forth reinforced how our emerging leaders program would propose potential impacts to the Belmont-Fallon target area. We heard the need for increased safety measures, outdoor spaces, as well as the need for economic opportunities in this neighborhood. We are pleased to share how our knowledge of Belmont-Fallon's history, analysis of the neighborhood, community engagement, and community engagement coalesced into the following design proposal for the Belmont-Fallon target area.
So it's a challenging question when you stop and you ask yourself, what makes a community? Once we gathered all of this data and all of our experiences, which helped us interpret the data, we landed on the idea that we couldn't do this alone. And Belmont-Fallon itself couldn't do this alone. This was going to be a cooperative effort between the city of Roanoke, the Belmont-Fallon community itself, and private corporations or support groups who are already dispersed throughout the community. So what we have here is a series of proposals that intentionally target those three categories. We further broke this down into what we viewed as immediate impacts, immediate needs, and long-term visions. Immediate needs are things that address the food deserts, healthcare disparities, speeding in the neighborhood, the accessibility for children to be able to move and get to know their own place. The long-term visions are the things that we dream about. We all have to have that what if. Those beautiful drawings that all of those students and all of those participants in our community outreach put together did not go unnoticed. There are things in here that are direct results of those dreams. So with that, we came up with a bunch of neighborhood ideas that address safety, streetscape, connectors, public infrastructure. All of those are things that can be handled by public policy, by the city of Roanoke, or by initiatives led through the city. The neighborhood itself already has a good foundation for these neighborhood-led initiatives. Some of the festivals, the I Heart Southeast Fest, some of the things that we've already seen in some of these images are grassroots starters of how we can identify a neighborhood. And then we need good community, we need good outside influence coming in. How do we bring people into this space? And what do those people contribute to this? We all know Belmont-Fallon in itself can't survive as its own little bubble. We need to bring people in, we need to bring investors in, we need to bring opportunities in. So through all of these thoughts, we developed a map of several different interventions, all targeted to address what we've just talked about. So starting up by the 581 corridor, we recognize that there's a need for the community to be able to safely access the greater downtown Roanoke area. This area is where many of the jobs are. It's definitely where much of the medical facilities are. And it's separated, it's cut off by 581 with a bridge that's highly trafficked, as we talked about, and an underpass, which honestly is dark and leads more towards the kind of center of Roanoke, but not necessarily something that gives opportunities and healthcare to the people who live in Belmont-Fallon. As we move down the Bullitt and Jameson corridor down this way, the piece of land located kind of in that wedge, we identified as being a good place to start with community identity. How do you generate the idea that this is a place? So many people drive down Bullitt and Jameson to get to a nearby town of Vinton, don't even stop and think about Belmont-Fallon. They speed through it. Like we said before, the neighborhood is 35 miles an hour down that street. And we can attest that it is not, that's not the reality. So how do we slow people down? How do we get them interested? How do we tell them that, hey, this place is here and you guys should stop? The next square that we have is 9th Street, Bullitt and Jameson. This is really the heart of our target area. This is where the community comes together or could have the opportunity to come together. So we have some great suggestions that start to target that as a space for gathering. One of the original tasks of this study was to look at establishing a community third space within this neighborhood. We started off down that path, and this was our primary location, but we soon began to realize that all these other layers of things demanded that we look at transportation and healthcare access and all those other good fundamental aspects of the community. Kind of up near the top, we have a Tazewell site. This is another site that we've just picked up on that kind of highlights what it is in the terrain of Roanoke. It's a hilly site, it's unused, it doesn't really seem suitable for building unless you want to build foundations on rock. So we looked at that as a good opportunity to be able to give back to the community and have them establish a place for themselves. And the last, the Presbyterian Community Center, it's kind of that tail end of the traffic between Bullitt and Jameson. We know that that Presbyterian Community Center, since we've talked to them, is looking at establishing another facility. They're constructing a bigger building right next to it. That opens up that site. So we decided that we would be able to take advantage of that opportunity.
I want our neighborhood to feel safe and accessible by all. We met this young woman at iHeart Southeast Fest in July. She moved to Belmont-FALLON in the last 9 months with her wife and dog because they love the beauty of the valley's natural landscape. She also wanted to be part of a supportive community that would support her lifestyle, and she thought Belmont-FALLON would be the perfect place for a forever home. Since she just moved to the area, we asked her what her first impressions of Belmont-FALLON were, and she said she loved the community and loved the events like iHeart Southeast Fest. And she said she would love to see more of events like that. When asked about the challenges she faced while living in Belmont-FALLON, she said she enjoys walking a lot with her dog and her wife. However, as a woman, she doesn't always feel safe walking around Belmont-FALLON. The sidewalks are in poor condition in some areas. There's a lack of adequate street lighting for walking her dog at night and a lack of crosswalks for crossing high traffic streets. We want this woman, as well as others in the community, to feel safe where they live by improving the infrastructure in this neighborhood.
And this woman we spoke to wasn't the only one who had an issue with the safety in this area. Pretty much everybody we talked to, from the youngest members of the community to the oldest, kept saying the same thing, that I don't feel safe walking in my neighborhood. So that was a major issue for us. We felt that that was incredibly important to address. There's a few reasons why they didn't feel safe. Bullitt and Jameson are major state roads owned by VDOT. And so you have so much back-to-back traffic every single day, twice a day during rush hour. People speed down those two roads that cut through this quiet residential area. So this is some current examples of what the area looks like. We're in this infrastructure section, we're addressing a few different things, from how people view Belmont-FALLON to how they can safely get through the streets. One of the first concerns, we'd really love to put some raised crosswalks at specific intersections, specifically near the middle school and the library and the community center, places where vulnerable populations are most likely to be crossing the street. It's difficult to put traffic calming measures onto a state road. But with the people that we spoke to, it seemed like targeting specific areas would give us the best argument to make these things implemented. You can imagine when it gets dark earlier, especially in the winter, and there's children walking home from school around 5 p.m. It's dark outside, the traffic's going really fast. We want to keep these people safe. We want them to feel protected. So another way we want to do that is by increasing the lighting in the neighborhood. There's a few of those really tall Cobra head street lights. There could definitely stand to be a few more. We'd also really like to add those decorative sidewalk lights. Proper Roanoke, the city center, has these really lovely decorative street lights that help give the street an extra level of character. And so we'd like to take that same design language and bring it into Belmont-Fallon to help visually connect it to the rest of Roanoke. And then also we want to have some fun. So maybe some nice decorative string lights when we increase the landscaping along the street, just to make things feel livelier, more open, a little bit more pleasant. Another thing we really feel is important is adding bus shelters. A lot of people in this neighborhood use the bus regularly to get to work, but there's nowhere for them to rest or be protected from the elements. So they're standing next to these bus stops, just in the heat on the sidewalk. If they're elderly, there's nowhere for them to sit. If it's raining, they're just at a loss. So we'd really like to add these bus shelters that includes bike racks and some of those e-scooters that have been so popular in downtown Roanoke. And then also using these shelters as a hub for a mutual aid station. You've seen those little libraries on the side of the road, or the little food boxes. So adding something here to make it more of a station for the community would be really helpful. And then this is a lovely little graphic of all of that together. So then bringing all of these things together to address the needs of the interior of the neighborhood, so that we can increase that safety. And then as we move forward, we can then work on welcoming the rest of Roanoke into Belmont-Fallon. One of the ways we'd like to do that is by increasing the signage to really give Belmont-Fallon an identity. So a big, beautiful sign that says, hey, you're somewhere new, you're somewhere special. There's things here. We also want to have some historical signage that brings out that rich history that Belmont-Fallon has, so that the rest of Roanoke and other visitors can see and appreciate that. And then, of course, you know, helping people get from point A to point B. As more things move into this town and there's more exciting stuff to do, we want people to be able to find that easily. So then we have a sketch of what we feel like Belmont-Fallon deserves to be recognized versus what it currently has. And we feel like we could do so much better. So then increasing with the traffic situation. So there are these bike paths you can see in red on either side of Belmont-Fallon, but there's absolutely nothing connecting those two. So we'd like to take Tazewell and Jameson, or Bullitt and Jameson, and turn it from a hazard into something that has the opportunity to really bring people into this area. So we want to connect these bike paths and add a greenway. It's also shown that when there's more bikers on the road, people tend to drive slower because they're more aware of the other people around them. So we think that that could also add to the traffic calming measures. And then, of course, we want to add more greenery to the sidewalk. So some different native plants that we can put along the road to make it a more lovely place to drive through, that encourages people to want to stop and see what's going on. And then with all of that together, with our big welcome sign and our increased safety measures and our greenway, hopefully that sets Belmont-Fallon off on the right foot to then become an actual destination for others and a place that the neighborhood can really be proud of.
So this is a testimonial from one of our ELA class of 2022 members named Preeti, who lives in downtown Roanoke and occasionally travels to Belmont-Fallon to shop at the closest CVS in the vicinity. Unfortunately, she couldn't be here today, so we will share her experience in her place. As much as it is a pleasure walking around downtown Roanoke, It is risky to walk on the narrow sidewalks on Elm Avenue south of Elmwood Park to get to Southeast Roanoke. One random weekend a few months ago, Preeti decided to walk around Southeast Roanoke area along Elm Avenue right across from Elmwood Park. At the time, she had no car and no destination in mind. While she walked across the existing bridge that spans over 581, she was concerned for her safety. The sidewalk is narrow and there's a lack of a buffer between the sidewalk and the road. The bridge is prone to high traffic and congestion as cars and commercial trucks alike speed by as they enter and exit the highway. As a pedestrian without a car, she felt very limited and unable to travel around Southeast Roanoke with ease. For our first site-specific proposal, we would like to propose a pedestrian and bike-friendly path to connect East and West Roanoke. As stated earlier, the addition of I-581 and Route 220 physically divided the East and West Roanoke. This made it hard for folks to commute to and from downtown Roanoke and limited their access to valuable resources, as we stated earlier, such as the hospital and medical clinic located in West Roanoke. When the current bridge on Elm Avenue was built over 581, it connected East and West Roanoke again. And the bridge was a vital addition to Roanoke, and it became the busiest and most used thoroughway in the city. However, the bridge doesn't support pedestrian and bike traffic to the fullest. Therefore, we would like to propose these immediate impacts that can be implemented by the city of Roanoke. Some of the immediate impacts are as follows. Improving the pedestrian walking path by creating a barrier between the vehicles and people, incorporating bollards or a concrete wall, adding sufficient lighting for pedestrian use, adding proper signage, and refinishing existing crosswalks so they're visible, and adding green paint for shared vehicle and bike lanes. These immediate changes, no matter how small, will give residents of Belmont-Fallon a safer and more comfortable connection to downtown Roanoke.
Our long-term vision for connecting East and West Roanoke involves a new pedestrian bridge. The bridge would connect walking paths of Bullitt Avenue Southeast over Interstate 581, making downtown more accessible to the residents of Belmont-Fallon. The new walking routes avoid high-speed roads and have limited amount of crosswalks compared to the existing walking routes. This long-term vision would separate pedestrian traffic from vehicular traffic and would connect Elmwood Park to a new proposed park at the West Gateway site.
I met this student at the Belmont Branch Public Library when we came to speak to them during their after-school program. She said, there are two parks over here, pointing on the map to Belmont Park and Morningside Park, but there aren't any over here. And she was kind of pointing to the middle of Belmont-Fallon. This bright student had an innate understanding that public space was missing in the middle of Belmont-Fallon. While exploring the neighborhood, we identified a site between Bullitt, Jameson, and 8th Street that has a lot of potential for public space that could be created quickly for immediate impact for residents. It is mostly vacant at the moment, aside from 3 existing houses and a basketball court that already provides some community activity. This land is privately owned, and there are plans for future development. However, while those plans are progressing through the design process, we propose to locate a temporary pop-up park here to be built from low-cost movable materials and volunteer labor in partnership with local organizations. To start off with the site, we propose preserving some of the existing elements, including the 3 houses that are still remaining on the site, the trees, and the basketball court. The trees will provide shade for a dog park, which can be created with just a fence, a water fountain, and benches. It has separate areas for larger breeds and smaller breeds, and we heard from many community members how much of a need there is for this type of space within the neighborhood.
The park could also include a community garden made from basic landscaping blocks. And an art garden with artwork and sculptures made by local students. The southwest portion of the site has a steep slope and makes for an ideal natural amphitheater to have outdoor movies in the spring, summer, and fall. Painting the crosswalks with bright colors gives residents a safer path to the park and adds more artistic interest to the site. The paved area at the corner of Bullitt and Jameson would be a great spot for a skate park made from prefabricated modular components. After the future development of the site, these components could be relocated to an alternate paved area somewhere else within the neighborhood. Jumping into the long-term vision of the West Gateway site, we want to emphasize that we know that this site is privately owned with the intention of developing it in the future. We just want to state that these ideas are our own and shouldn't be taken to represent the intentions of the owner, developer, or their design team. While we hope that these ideas may serve to inspire the developer to take to their team, they're in no way obligated to. That being said, since we know that this site is a target for development, we felt that the best way to present the long-term vision for this site was to show a future mixed-use residential development that could, over time, weave in some of the short-term spaces mentioned in the previous slides. We believe that this site can support a variety of scales of housing, mixing the traditional single-family homes of the existing neighborhood all the way up to the density of a mixed-use development, balanced out with the space that could continue to be shared by the community. The first thing that we considered for the future vision of this site was to begin to reestablish the neighborhood scale of the block between 8th and 9th Street. This block used to be filled with rows of houses, and unfortunately, only 3 remain today. We feel that the opportunity exists to rebuild the homes on this block and to reestablish the streetscape along Bullitt and Jameson, helping to restore a welcoming residential neighborhood feel. Adding public art installations in these small underutilized lots along Jameson Avenue will also help create interesting outdoor spaces for residents to interact with. The next step is to create a neighborhood playground, decreasing the dog park in size to create a family-friendly environment where residents can bring their kids, dogs, or both. Along with creating additional foot traffic comes the necessity to enhance safety measures. And considering the high traffic speed along Bullitt and Jameson, we are proposing flashing walk signals to make crossing these streets to get to the site less dangerous for pedestrians and should also act as some additional traffic calming measures. Next, as we cross over to 7th Street and reach the portion of the site where Bullitt and Jameson converge, we can begin to introduce a little more housing density, starting with repeating the neighborhood feel and streetscape with a series of townhouses continuing along Bullitt Avenue. Where Bullitt and Jameson converge, we are proposing a mid-rise mixed-use development. This will allow for more housing density, as well as provide services for the community, such as medical facilities on the ground floor of the larger building. As you can see, we're continuing to preserve the open space that was created in the immediate impact phase, because we feel that's important for this development to be a part of the community where everyone feels like they're allowed to come and spend time together. Here are some concept sketches of what the development like this could look like at ground level. Since multifamily buildings are largely amenitized, we feel that this could be a great way to not only provide amenities needed for the typical mixed-use development, but also create a vibrant social gathering spot for the community as a whole. This way, we believe that the neighborhood can get some of the housing density that it needs, all while maintaining a residential scale that's welcoming to everyone in Belmont-FALLON.
When we talked to the students at the Presbyterian Community Center, this young lady said, "There aren't enough beautiful places in Roanoke because people destroy them. I like places where I can be quiet and reflective." So near the intersection of Tazewell and 11th Street is a steeply sloped piece of land that is covered with trees and a small staircase. And we think that the community could use this place as an area to showcase local artists that can eventually become that contemplative space that that young lady is looking for. So right now, we can start small, collaborating with existing art-led focused initiatives and paint the stair and retaining wall with colorful murals that are located in the city already. And this would set the space for artists to share their work. And looking forward, the area can be transformed with a winding ramp that turns between the trees following the slope of the area. And excuse me, this would make the highest viewpoint accessible to all. A sculpture garden can begin to emerge between the ramp that people can view as they walk through, making a meaningful and creative destination space on Tazewell. And here's just an example of what that could look like in the future.
We had the pleasure of speaking to another primary school student during the Presbyterian community engagement with the youth. He says, "How good you describe a place doesn't matter if you come here and see it differently. It's important to not only listen to the youth, but to also attempt to see things from their perspective. Growing up in this community, there are not a lot of safe things for them to do. And to have a group come in and say their community is great, it's harder for them to believe than to see the potential in their community." This brought us to the Presbyterian Community Center site, located on the corner of 13th Street and Jameson Avenue. As you can see here, this is the existing conditions of the current site. We know that the community center will be developed in the future with the relocation of this building moving to the west of the lot. The immediate impact for the new location of the community center, you can see, is in gray, and with the existing parking lot remaining the same. Using that site, we decided to create a public garden that would incorporate features such as a Zen garden and sculptures and art from the community using recycled materials, and so that it's low cost and able and minimal effort. The garden should still be enclosed with a gate or hedging landscape that creates a barrier from the street. And on the left or right, my apologies, you can see some of the initiatives and precedent photos that we looked at, with colorful paths being created with painted rocks from students and recycled art being made out of rain boots and bottle caps, along with other recycled plastic materials. For the long-term vision, we felt it was best to utilize the rest of the lot for a private community garden for the Presbyterian Community Center. In this garden space, it would focus on expanding the gardening bins, allowing for more produce to be produced, market stalls, as well as a seating area for a gathering space. And behind that seating area could be a mural created for the public through local organizations. And here is our long-term vision of what that new proposed site could look like.
All right, so here's an image we took of a lovely couple we met at iHeart Southeast Fest. As mentioned earlier, we were so proud to be a part of the festival. We got to see firsthand how vibrant and connected this community is. We had the privilege of meeting many community members, and in speaking to them, we heard a common theme throughout. Belmont-FALLON is unique and proud, but the issue of safety is holding the neighborhood back from reaching its full potential. The community wants to feel safe and secure. They want Belmont-FALLON to thrive. And in order to achieve this, we need to cultivate safe spaces. So this brings us to the 9th Street corridor site. Shown on this map is the location we're proposing can be the thriving heart of the community. This targeted area is situated in a prime location between Jameson and Bullitt, with 9th Street intersecting. Here's an aerial view of the site's current condition. You can see there's a lot of parking lots, empty space, and a general sense that you just want to pass through here. There's no draw or incentive for the neighborhood to hang out here since it's been affected by a lot of crime, which has unfortunately been getting worse over the years. So after asking the community what spaces they feel are missing in their neighborhood, we've generated some ideas, both for immediate impact and long-term impact, to make this area a desirable and safer place to be. The ideas shown on this screen are the general immediate impacts we are recommending. And in the next few slides, we'll get a better understanding of each. Here we are proposing improvements to 9th Street Boulevard. We believe by improving the streetscape and by making this boulevard pedestrian friendly, by adding trees and greenery, pedestrian walkways, crosswalks, bike paths, and slowing down traffic, more people in the community will feel comfortable coming here. This slide is showing the proposal for a temporary pop-up farmers market and a food truck spot. These temporary spaces serve to empower local entrepreneurs and farmers by providing a location for them to generate business and also provide for the community. Having access to a farmer's market close by in the neighborhood also promotes a healthy lifestyle. And having food trucks nearby encourages more people to come out and enjoy some food while supporting local businesses. Hopefully healthy as well. The next slide is showing the potential for a community art maker space repurposed into an existing building. Darren, a community member we had the pleasure of meeting with, owns this building shown in blue. And supports this idea of this art maker space to encourage and promote the many artistic voices throughout the community. Immediate impacts are important for re-energizing the community and giving the neighborhood a starting point for revitalization. We can start small and encourage growth and action, which will provide the platform for long-term impacts.
The 9th Street site is hot in the summer, desolate, and concrete as far as the eye can see. The long-term vision goal is to create a lively, active space through increasing green spaces, walkability, and revenue-generating opportunities for the community. On a reclaimed site, a proposed permanent farmers market is a key component. This includes a stretched fabric canopy using sustainable materials. A grass lawn adjacent to the market provides a space for live music and lounging. If popularity and involvement in arts increases, a larger maker gallery space can be introduced. Due to topography, the neighborhood to the left and the right of this 9th Street corridor are not connected. So we propose a communicating stair and mirror wall to create that pedestrian connection that it's lacking. And we heard many requests from the community for more restaurants and coffee shops on their way to and from the city. We propose a farm-to-table cafe where patrons can dine among the plants.
So in summation, the three biggest takeaways looking at the 9th Street corridor are lack of proper signage, no distinguishing elements at community gateways, and overuse of hardscape in comparison to the green spaces. So this is a sketch of 9th Street and Bullitt Avenue facing west, and it depicts the possible development of the area through various phases of urban design. Shown in this sketch is a summation of some of our ideas being tied together, such as the addition of bus stops, green spaces, vegetation, community art, and improved streetscape, all of which are not currently present. Developing main areaways not only will improve the area aesthetically, but also enhance safety and communal access. Design solutions such as the implementation of green spaces to better organize the relationship between pedestrian and vehicular traffic will allow these places to become better areas for gathering and circulation in general. And this is another perspective sketch of the market area, which is proposed, showing the view from Bullitt Avenue facing north and parallel to 9th Street. This parcel was currently the location of a convenience store and shows the area being used as a permanent market area with the addition of another green space for the community.
So all of these combine to create our comprehensive plan for Belmont-FALLON. Over the course of the year, we have looked at all kinds of information from data and fallen back on our experiences to help us understand this community. Our task here wasn't to necessarily take what we thought a community was and impose it upon this area, but really to start to listen, to use our own experience and the experience of everyone around us in order to create informed decisions about what this place could be. It's our idea that everything presented here helps strengthen the community. It helps provide safety, access to basic needs from food to medical care to connections with the environment around them. And it also helps instill a sense of pride, something that the community can rally around and use to define themselves. And through that strength, it's our hope that the outside community will be further attracted to the area and help rebuild Belmont-FALLON and give it a further identity and maybe a destination and someplace that its citizens can stand up and shout about. So thank you, everyone. If you have any questions, we are sticking around.